Hi, you're looking super handsome today. Today we're discussing diversity in Star Trek and what it means to me and means to future generations. So stick around, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I want to hear your opinions and make sure to listen. Point of views are good. So back in 1990, Australia used to get TV shows a couple of years after America. I saw a Geordie LaForge figure in the shop and I didn't know what it was from. I saw the spaceship, I saw Geordie LaForge, and I bought that figure. I think it was like $10, $9.99. Geordie LaForge in his red uniform with his visor. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And that's my first thing with Star Trek. And then I saw the show. And what I saw was men wearing miniskirts. Next Generation in particular, men wore miniskirts in the beginning. Later on, they wore pants underneath the miniskirts, but they wore miniskirts. And it was odd, but I just thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And I'd never seen the original series. None of my family was into Star Trek, and I only got 6. I was very young. I was 5 years old in 1990, so I only got to see bits of the show. As a kid, being slightly odd out, being slightly weird, I loved the spaceship. I loved the touch screens. I loved the voice activated computer. All of those. This is what really annoys me. This thing here. Yes, you little shit. What I had in this show was I had Klingon. I had all of these characters I didn't know and I didn't understand. But what it taught me was it didn't matter what color they were. And in my own family, I had an Indian sister-in-law and I had Aboriginal friends, and color wasn't an issue for me. It was something I didn't even think about. So when I watched Star Trek The Next Generation, and particularly when I saw Whoopi Goldberg, another drawing point for Star Trek The Next Generation, I thought, wow, that's Whoopi Goldberg, a film actress in this show. Why is she doing that? In the beginning of what Star Trek taught me was, it doesn't matter who you are or what you look like or how you are, you can be a part of this world. We're always striving to be better. The one thing Next Generation taught me, because it had representation, but representation very lightly splattered through. It taught me that no matter who you were okay to be in this universe. Deep Space Nine was a very different show. Very, very different. It was on a space station, which didn't interest me at all. It was just like, oh, a space station, whoop-de-doo. And it didn't get me, and it was on very late. Like Star Trek by that point was on 11:30. Once again, I was between 5 and 10 years old, so I could only watch maybe one episode of each every couple of weeks. And The Next Generation was always the one I was the most excited about. Once again, teaching me these themes of, it doesn't matter who you are, you're accepted. My family at that time, there was a lot of domestic abuse and there was a lot of verbal abuse. We were living in what's called housing commission, which is government housing. I had brothers who used drugs. I had brothers who were dealing with their own demons. We moved a lot. I changed schools quite a lot. It was a time when, as a kid, I look back and I used to think, oh, this is an amazing time. But actually, as a kid, it was pretty bad for me. So I used shows like, one show, Star Trek, to make it all better. That was my fantasy world. That's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be on the Enterprise, especially the Enterprise D. I wanted to be a part of something that was better than yourselves, help others and join in and be a part of this family and community. It distracted me from what was going on at the time. When I got older and I got into my teen years, Star Trek took on a different meaning to me. I was figuring out who I was. I was dating a girl at the time, but I wasn't sure about my own sexuality. I was watching Star Trek, and by that time it was Star Trek Voyager, and watching Star Trek TNG, and what I saw in those characters was, once again, that acceptance of who you are. They were having sexual relations with aliens. They were having relationships with different people, and to me that kind of represented like being different and not being quite the same. And in those shows, they represented to me these issues. There were non-gender specific characters within Star Trek, particularly characters, and Deep Space Nine as a teenager began to come into it more. In regards to Jadzia Dax, she was a man, she's a woman. In regards to the representation, and during the TNG era, something sadly happened. Yes, everyone was accepted, it wasn't an issue. We got a lot of straight relationships in those series. We never got a gay relationship. The closest we got was Jadzia Dax in a semi-lesbian relationship where she was a man previously and then met up with the lover from her when she was a man, and then they were still in love. That was the closest thing to representation we got in the TNG era. I'm very grateful for Star Trek giving me that sense of hope as a child and that sense of I could be whoever I wanted to be. But there was no one truly like me in it. There was no one really who was gay. So I turned as a gay. As I turned into my teenage years, I looked for other shows for representation. Queer as Folk, Beautiful People, a lot of English stuff, because English had a lot of representation. American stuff just wasn't doing it. They had shows like Will and Grace where, although the characters were gay, they never kissed. And that did happen later on in the seasons, but it was one of those things where I was looking for someone to tell me I was okay. Star Trek didn't do that. The TNG era didn't do that. You'd hear whisperings, like particularly around Enterprise, that Malcolm Reed was going to be gay. Voyager, they always hinted at other relationships, but it was never shown. It's only with this new era of Trek where finally I was seen and I was okay. A lot of people within the older Star Trek community, and it disappoints me, a lot of people in the older Star Trek community, the ones who grew up on TNG, the ones who are my age, are turning around and going, these shows are too woke. Why do we need all this representation? Why are they there? I watched Discovery, and there was a married gay couple, and they were in love with each other, and they were there. They were never mentioned whether it was odd. It was never shown as being weird. It was just, that was the gay couple. There was a gay couple. The doctor and the chief engineer were married. Star Trek was a big part of my growing up. But as I got older, and particularly into the Enterprise era, I loved all eras of Star Trek. But Star Trek had the hope, had the acceptance, without showing us really that they were accepting anything. You had Deanna and Riker, straight male couple. You had B'Elanna and Tom, straight couple. You had T'Pol and Trip, straight couple. You had Archer getting with women, Janeway getting with men. You never had a gay couple just on the ship as normal. Like, you never had it. And you never had, particularly like Deep Space Nine is 100% the most progressive of the TNG era. And even it faltered on LGBTQIA issues. And I'm not perfect with those issues. I don't understand. When they introduced trans characters into Discovery, I don't understand trans people. And I've done a lot of research. I watch people like Noah Fintz. I watch people like Jamie Dodger, that is it, who are both trans men and they've transitioned, and trying to understand what they are. Watching Star Trek now, I see myself represented in that. I'm not much younger than Stamets and his husband. And I see that representation there. It's not representation. They're not going, oh, look, gay couple. Oh, we're going to do a lot of stories about them being gay. There's no stories about them being gay. There's stories about them being a couple in love. There's stories about feelings about losing his husband. It's the same with the trans characters. There's stories about losing that person they love. It's stories about... The most pushy area of this is when Stamets is talking to the trans character and they go, I'm a they. I've never felt like either. It's representation. That's why Discovery appeals to the young people so much, because they see themselves in it. And what the fans who are going this show's too woke now are really saying is, I don't care about you. I don't want you on my screen. We had 50 years of just white straight characters. We had 50 years of straight relationships. We had 50 years of very little representation of people of color. Deep Space Nine being the only one. And when you go into watching Discovery, It's a different era now. Mental health is just as important as your physical health. We've learned that since The Next Generation. They had a counselor on the bridge. Obviously, mentally they weren't doing well, but very rarely was mental issue a part of the problem on it. I'm disappointed in some of the older Star Trek community are unable to change. Star Trek is about change. It's about growing. It's about learning. It's about hope, and it's about not being bigoted or negative. And what we have is a group of fans who grew up on that, who've abandoned it, who've abandoned that notion of just gone, the TNG area is the way it should be. TNG, while my favorite and the one I grew up with, is very flawed and didn't represent me. When you talk about new Star Trek, you talk about Discovery, Picard, Lower Deck, Prodigy, and Strange New Worlds. Discovery is the only one that has true representation. Picard has representation, but it's safe representation because they know that those TNG fans are coming to watch for Picard. Strange New Worlds, as much as Uhura was a central figure in the second episode, the main cast is the main few cast members are predominantly white. They're, as far as I know, so far, it's only been 2 episodes, they're straight. Pike certainly is. So what you have is a Star Trek at the moment that is trying to represent every demographic they can. Infinite diversity in infinite combination. There's no wrong. Who you love isn't wrong. And who you are isn't wrong. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter where you're from, whether you were poor, whether you were rich. TNG never showed that. You just were that. Deep Space Nine showed the darkness that was in the Star Trek universe. At the same time, was limited by the fact that it was a PG show. And believe me, Far Beyond the Stars and episodes really had a political point behind them. There was a lot. Deep Space Nine, as I said, most representative. But for me, for a gay male, now in my late 30s, none of them didn't show me me. Discovery showed me what I wanted. Showed 2 men in love. It showed me people of non-binary, trans, of whom were accepted within their crew without question. Picard, Seven's just accepted to be in love with Raffi. People go, she wasn't a lesbian in Voyager. The TNG era never pushed it. If anything, Seven got assimilated when she was 6. She didn't socially grow up as a Borg. When she got out, she would have just gone for the norm. And the norm in the TNG era was straight relationships. That's what it was. And finally, we're getting a level of diversity. Finally, we're getting a level of change. And there is fans who don't want to get on board with that change. Fans who got stuck somewhere before the early 2000s. There's no woke agenda behind this. In the 60s, Nichelle Nichols represented black people on the bridge, African American people on the bridge with white people serving in the same capacity. The original series also said women couldn't be captain. That's not diversity. They tried, but by then Gene Roddenberry had left. TNG said a blind man can be on the bridge just as good. Blind man with a visor, he can see with the visor. But there was no one like me there. The TNG era had one fatal flaw. After 17 years, 4 new series in the TNG era, what we got was a more and more watered down version of the issues. Gays on TV were just coming to their own. Will and Grace, Ellen DeGeneres. We had shows like Queer as Folk coming on. The TNG era, which was meant to be Star Trek, the most progressive show, the show that represented the change we wanted to see in the world, had become stale. Enterprise, they didn't even risk putting a gay character in. They didn't want to lose an audience. And now we're judging a show on the fact that it's showing progress and change. Because there is no issue. It's a style of storytelling to deal with someone's emotional impact over several episodes. That's a story take. That happens in all serialized television. Not everyone gets over something in an instant. A person doesn't stop loving their husband because they died. Representation is at the core of Star Trek. And in Discovery, and in Picard, and I'm hoping in Strange New Worlds, we will have more of that representation. I want to see all the colors of the rainbow. I want to see all the people of the world represented in this show. Star Trek is about moving forward. If you can't move forward with the changes in Star Trek, then you're living in the nostalgia of the past. It has been over 30 years since TNG. I'm older, you're older. Unless you're 18, but that's a very small part of my audience because I'm old as fuck. You need to change. If you don't like Star Trek anymore, that's fine. Don't watch it. But remember, Star Trek represents the future today. Star Trek represents the world we want to be. Representation in Star Trek, they go conjoined. That's what Star Trek is. To me. You might have a different opinion, feel free to leave it in the comments. With the writing, if you think the writing's bad, I think the writing's bad. When it comes to woke agenda, I'm not going to hear it. Because Star Trek has always been woke. And if you don't think that, then you've not been watching Star Trek. You've been watching the light side. You don't want to deal with the issues. You don't want to deal with a lack of representation. You just want to watch a show about space. You're not a true Star Trek fan if you don't get the message. And believe me, a lot of the guys my age who grew up with TNG aren't getting the message. So what do you think about representation in Star Trek? How's it been over the years? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm sorry this video is longer than normal, but this issue really pisses me off. I've been discussing a lot of things on Reddit and on TikTok. And make sure to subscribe because I will have Prodigy next week. I will have Strange New Worlds next week, reviews, and I will do more videos like this if this video gets enough views. Have a good night. You're still looking freaking handsome. Trek Trav out.